In one of the weirdest extraterrestrial encounters of all time, a hunter was accosted by a blood-sucking plant creature from space. Today on American Strangeness, the Vegetable Man of West Virginia. Gray Barker, pioneering flying saucer investigator, publicized a bizarre close encounter with the Vegetable Man of West Virginia in the March 1976 issue of his newsletter. Barker was best known for his book about the Men in Black, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, and for his UFO zine, The Saucerian. Barker interviewed Jennings H. Frederick of Grantown, who claimed to have encountered the Vegetable Man, as Frederick called it, in the middle of July 1968. The young man was returning to his father's property after an unsuccessful day bow hunting for woodchuck when he stopped to rest under some maple trees. That is when he heard a high-pitched jabbering like a record playing at exaggerated speed. Frederick understood the words, perhaps through mental telepathy. They were telling him that the speaker came in peace and needed his medical assistance. Sweating, Frederick reached into his pocket for a handkerchief, but felt a sudden pain as if his right arm had become entangled with a wild berry briar. Withdrawing his arm, Frederick saw attached to his wrist a thin and flexible right hand and arm, about the diameter of a quarter in size, and a plant-like green in color. There were 3 fingers grasping him, each about 7 inches long, with a needle-like tip and suction cups. The being tightened its grip on Frederick's arm and punctured a vein. Frederick heard the suction and realized that the creature was drawing his blood. He swiveled around and looked straight into the human-like face of his assailant. It had yellow slanted eyes and pointed ears. The body resembled the stalk of a huge ungainly plant that masked remarkable strength. It held Frederick firm as it drained his blood, coupled with the hypnotic effect of the being's sing-song message. Frederick cried out in fright and pain. Suddenly the creature's eyes turned red and appeared to rotate, with spinning orange circles emerging from them. The effect transfixed the young man, stopping him in his tracks as his pain and terror suddenly ceased. The entire transfusion lasted maybe a minute before the Vegetable Man released its grip on Frederick. It then ran up the hill with massive leaps that covered 25 feet or more with each bound, and cleared a 5-foot fence with a few feet to spare. The abominable green creature, per Barker, disappeared into the woods atop the hill, followed by a humming and whistling that Frederick suspected was its saucer taking off. The young man stumbled home and cleaned and bandaged his arm, the puncture wounds convincing him that the experience had not just been an hallucination. Barker wrote that Frederick was an amateur rocket expert lately turned UFO investigator, not by choice, but to prove his own sanity after multiple extraterrestrial encounters. On the morning of April 23, 1965, his mother Iva had witnessed from the front porch of the family home a landed saucer on a hillside pasture. The disc was about 10 feet in diameter and 5 feet tall, cream or silver in color, and rotated clockwise while emitting a loud buzz. There was a crystal dome that sparkled in the morning sun with rows of windows underneath. The saucer hovered about 5 feet above the grass, although what appeared to be an elevator shaft with doorway projected downward from the ship to the ground. About 200 yards away, a small, satanic-looking creature, more animal than human, was collecting grass and dirt and stuffing them into a small bag it carried. It was nude with black or dark green skin, had pointy ears and a tail, and displayed no facial features that Iva could discern. A dark green umbilical cord-like cable connected the creature to its craft. This cable ran upward into the doorway. After about 15 minutes, the creature retreated into the doorway on the stem of the craft. The saucer rotated faster, hummed louder, and then rose like a feather, straight up into the sky. When Jennings, the oldest son, returned home from school and heard his mother's account, he hurried to the landing site to investigate. There was a depression in the hillside from where the elevator had rested, which the boy estimated exceeded a ton. He also found the creature's footprints, each about 6 inches long and displaying 4 clawed toes. Jennings judged the being to have weighed about 45 pounds. He collected plaster casts of the footprints, along with hair samples found within, and sent them along with photographs of the site to the Air Force. The Air Force kept the samples and replied back with their explanation for the event. A weather balloon, of course. It is unclear if the being Iva saw was the same or related in any way to the vegetable man her son would encounter 3 years later. Frederick told Barker that he had experienced additional UFO sightings, including one with a time distortion. He was nervous after reading books and articles by John Keel that described a pattern in which contactees were visited numerous times, causing great challenges in their personal lives. Frederick did ultimately join the Air Force and spent the final days of his enlistment with NASA. Though obtaining security clearance, Frederick explained in vague terms that there had been a major lapse in security that resulted in him learning of a secret project beyond his authorization, which Barker presumed to involve UFOs. Frederick received a dishonorable discharge, and 4 months later, the Men in Black came calling. He was awoken in the middle of the night by a red flash and saw a small canister the size of an apple come bouncing into the room, emitting a red vapor. Before Frederick could pull his .38 pistol out from under his pillow, he felt a needle prick his left arm. Poor Frederick had a penchant for getting poked and prodded, didn't he? 3 men, dressed in black turtleneck sweaters, pants, and ski masks, climbed through the windows, joining whomever had stuck Frederick with the needle. Frederick overheard them converse about having gassed the rest of his family and darted the dogs, and confirmed that Frederick would be out shortly. As the shadow of unconsciousness enclosed him, Frederick saw the men put on gas masks, pocket the canister, and open a briefcase containing a tape recorder. They covered his face and began to ask him about his UFO sightings, what he thought they were, the nature of time, and the future. When Frederick awoke the next morning, no one else in the house reported anything strange. There is some ambivalence about Barker's reliability as a UFO investigator. The Clarksburg Harrison Public Library, which holds a collection of Barker's papers, cautions that the noted UFO author, a Clarksburg, Tennessee resident, was a, quote, teller of tall tales and hoaxer from the early 1950s until his death in 1984. Barker was noted for his dramatic style, blurring fact with fiction to capture the imagination. However, the vegetable man does bring to mind another strange case, although without any apparent otherworldly provenance, that being the Plantimal of New Orleans. This fantastic article details a violent encounter with a, quote, missing link between the animal and vegetable kingdoms, titled Horror in a Swamp. Although it took place in New Orleans, the news appears to have originated in the United Kingdom, running exclusively in British and Australian newspapers. As published in the February 6, 1924 Daily Record and Mail in Glasgow, Scotland. Horror in a Swamp. Botanists fight for life in plant's grip. New Orleans, Tuesday. A horrible flesh-eating plant animal, rooted in the earth like a plant, but with the skin, muscles, and bony skeleton of an animal, is said to have been discovered in the depths of a great swamp 40 miles from New Orleans by Joseph Villaroo and George Gastron, 2 botanists who were lost for over a week in the heart of the swamp. The plant is said to be carnivorous and to devour small animals. The botanists believe, says a correspondent, that the plant is a missing link between the plant and animal kingdoms, since it possesses many of the characteristics of both. They further say that every stem of this strange plant is built round a bone running through the center. Instead of vegetable structure, the plant is formed of flesh like that of an animal. A wrinkled skin forms the outer surface of the plant's structure. Cry for help. The mysterious plant grew near the edge of the water on a small island, and resembled a palm tree to some extent, although its general color was gray. Fragrant yellow flowers growing near the foot of the tree attracted Villaroo, who attempted to pick them up. As he stooped, he was suddenly seized by several of the large fronds of the freak plant and slowly drawn towards the main stem. Calling loudly for help, Villaroo at the same time seized the fronds that held him, but to his horror found that they were huge muscles like those of a giant. When Gaston ran to the assistance of his companion, he too was seized by the creepers and made prisoner, and it was not until the two men had used their sharp camp axes to cut through the bone and sinew that they were able to free themselves. Their task occupied them a couple of hours because, as they cut off some of the creepers, others seized them. Snake-like creepers. Several small animals, such as squirrels and rabbits, were caught by the plant during the time the men were held captive, and the sight of the snake-like skin-covered creepers darting out to catch the terrified creatures was like a terrible nightmare. When the small animals were captured, the life was squeezed out of them, and they were lifted by the fronds to a big opening towards the top of the main stem, which serves as the stomach of the plant. The other man said that as the axe fell, the plant writhed in apparent agony, and red sap, resembling blood, oozed from the wounds. So, are there fearsome vegetable men and other botanical horrors spreading terror in America's South? When out in the woodlands and wetlands of the southeastern U.S., it might be best to keep alert to the sudden twitching of the nearest tree.